This is the Hawk Talk podcast from River Valley School District. This podcast is a vehicle for sharing many of the great things taking place in River Valley schools. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Hawk Talk podcast. I'm Mike McDermott, and I'm your host. And joining us for this episode is Curtis Fiedler, varsity wrestling coach and special education teacher at River Valley High School. Curtis, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about your history as a wrestler and then as a wrestling coach.
Well, as far as what I've done, I've been lucky enough to experience a lot of things. I've got to obviously be a wrestler at Mineral Point, which was a lot of fun, and is a very successful program. Out of high school, I ended up as an official for 6 years, and I was also for 9 years working with Fox Sports, covering the state wrestling tournament for TV, which was an absolute blast, being the color commentator for Joe Miller. And then after that, I got my degree at UW-Whitewater, got offered a job here, and have been coaching River Valley ever since. So this is year 6 for me as a coach and a teacher, and this will be year 3 for me as co-head coach for the Blackhawks.
All right, great. Thanks. So if you had a dual meet that ended in a tie, and to break the tie, the coaches were going to wrestle to settle that. How are you good to go with wrestling right now? Or?
It's tell you what, it's a long way from the top when you're not as active as you used to be. Believe me, people love to joke at me about used to be weighing 130 pounds, and I clearly am not anymore. But, from time to time, if it called upon it, I think Pat or I could hold our own and make something happen. But luckily, and it doesn't seem like that's going to happen anytime soon, that they're going to change the rule to that. And so I will be a strict advocate of keeping it the way we have it.
So did you wrestle at 130? Was that or what weight did you wrestle at when you were in high
my
school?
freshman, sophomore year, I was 125 pounds, and I got second my sophomore year. And then junior, senior year, I wrestled 130 pounds and was a state champ at that for Mineral Point.
So in all seriousness, is it common practice for coaches to wrestle in practice with their wrestlers? I mean, for those of us who aren't in the wrestling room and don't really get to peek into that world, is that pretty common?
It is common. I don't do it as much as I should, mainly because, I don't want to be embarrassed by some of the kids on the mat because they're much better than I am right now. But, we've got a lot of great coaches that come up. Scott Legal and Ralph Legal. Dan Makovic is in there wrestling with the big guys all the time. We've had Seth Legal come up. Kyle Muller, the River Valley grad from way back when, has been coming up as of late. I'm always I grew up as a freshman when Cal Jensen was a senior, and he was the guy we looked up to. And when he comes in there, it's hard for me to hold in my excitement to see Cal Jensen, because he was the guy that, he ruled the state as far as wrestling went when he was a senior. So it's cool to see him step in. But again, we have a lot of guys that come in there and work hard with those guys, and we appreciate it a ton. And not only that, the coaches compete in there quite a bit, but we have kids that just graduated that come back and work with those guys. So that's a lot of fun also.
That's a unique thing about wrestling. I know that sometimes when I used to coach basketball, we would occasionally have a group of alumni who would come in for a different look, because after scrimmaging so many times in practice, it's nice to have some guys and also some people who are a little older and stronger.
And I don't know what it is about wrestling, but, and I remember the exact same way when I was in high school. It feels like after you graduate, you almost feel like you have to give something back a little bit, and that's the cool thing about the sport. And we're able to have kids come in a year or two after they graduate. We still see Joe Crook and Zach Cook, and we'll get Eli Alt and Dustin Hatfield this year, and everyone in between. So it makes our job easy as coaches when those guys come into the room, because we're just a bunch of old guys talking about, this is how you're supposed to do it. You can bring those kids into the room, and these the wrestlers that we have in there now, they saw these guys compete and realized they lived it. They know what it takes to be successful at this sport. So they really help us out a ton as coaches.
Fantastic. You mentioned Eli and Dustin, and that, of course, takes us back to the end of last season when you had a very successful year.
Yeah, it was.
It must be nice to be able to look back at that. Of course, you're starting a new year, and in a sense, last year's done, but there has to be some carryover there.
Oh, I see it as a double-edged sword. Obviously, it was such a fun year. We had such a great senior group. And, not just Dustin and Eli, but Gavin Whipperforth, Nate Jennings, Tennessee Hatfield. I'm going to forget people trying to name them all, but, they helped us out tremendously. Ethan Johnson was another one, too. They helped us out tremendously, and they had great success as a class, and not only those individuals that ended up winning state titles, but, as a good side of it, there's absolutely carryover. You want to ride that wave of success as much as possible. We had 3 state champions, a runner-up, and a couple other medalists. And you want to show, see, River Valley is successful. You should join our program and help us out. And that's certainly the wave we've been riding up until this point. At the same time, we lost a lot of guys to graduation last year. And now, it's a good problem to have as far as seeing what young kids are going to step up. Mm-hmm. And, we've got a good crop of kids of old and new that, we'll truly see where they're at as far as development and leadership goes as the year goes on.
It's funny that you mentioned the reputation of the program for River Valley because sometimes I'll run into people who aren't from River Valley, but one of the things that they know about the place is that wrestling has been strong over the years here.
And it's funny because, River Valley has always seemed to have a huge rivalry with Mineral Point. So I absolutely heard about River Valley and the rivalry and how successful they've been. I've heard about it since 2000 when I was in high school. So it's not new to me at all. It's awesome to hear the stories, certainly of all these old people, and I mean that in the nicest way possible, old people. But hearing from Rich Lovinger and Gerald Stoffaker, Radke and Hatfield and Pat Mahoney even, hearing about all these stories of, well, we never lost to Mineral Point and I can fire back. Well, that's funny because I never lost to River Valley. And just you could feel the competitive juices firing up on both sides talking about that. And it's nice to be part of just a historical program such as Mineral Point and River Valley. I've been very blessed to be part of 2 great programs. Mineral Point with so many team state titles and individual champions. River Valley with so many team state titles and individual champions, and being able to just 2 years ago make our first team state tournament since it's been created, and last year having 3 state champions. It makes this job easy, but more so it makes this job a lot of fun. More fun as a coach, in all honesty, than it ever was for me as a competitor.
And it's nice when you have a program like Mineral Point that's rival, they're close by, and over the years those rivalries grow. But part of what I hear you saying is that elevates both programs because there's a competition that pushes the other team.
Oh, absolutely. We want to be better than them. They want to be better than us. So we got to work hard to get to that. And I think that's what keeps River Valley going. And it's not only those kids that are in the room right now that want to always be better, and we want to be better than this team, than that team, but it's everyone on the outside in the community of River Valley saying, well, we never lost to those guys. Well, son of a gun, I don't want to lose to those guys either. So it works very well both ways.
So that match, you open on the 24th of November at Riverdale, and then you go to Mineral Point on the 28th. So that's I would guess is an early measuring stick for you as to where you're at as a team.
It's a great first duel right out the gate for us, Mineral Point, and it's a nice measuring stick for both of us, to be honest with you, and being able to have those guys and compete with Coach Schmitz over at Mineral Point, that helps us. And sometimes we're gonna get our butt whooped, sometimes we're gonna really be ahead of the curve. But facing such a good team historically that is so fundamentally sound, it really shows us what we need to work on early out of the gate and sort of sets the building blocks and the foundation for as the year goes on.
Sure. So you mentioned that, of course, you lost some seniors to graduation. How are your numbers throughout your lineup? Do you have any holes in the lineup where you're not going to be able to fill out a weight class? Or
it's really early on to figure that out, because honestly, we'll end up with one team in November and end up with a totally different looking team come February. But I think we're certainly going to have some spots to fill. It's not easy filling Eli Alt's shoes or Dustin Hatfield's shoes, and right now it's about getting the bodies in there to fill a team, because realistically 14 weight classes is just it's too many for a school like ours and anyone below us. But we do what we can. But I think overall we should have a solid team. We're gonna have a hole here and there, maybe a forfeit. I don't know yet. I really don't know. But I think we've got, again, a good balance of some veterans coming back. Obviously I can talk on and on and on about Zach Licht and Caleb Radke, and Shane Legal. But, we've got a good balance of kids that had a season under their belt last year. I think we got a solid group of freshmen that are ready to step in right away. And, as freshmen, they're certainly going to take their lumps. There's no doubt about that. But I have faith that, they won't be down on themselves because of that. Instead, that'll help them grow. And when February comes, they'll be ready to rock.
Sounds good. What about numbers overall in wrestling? Like, are you seeing a steady number of kids that are coming into your wrestling program? And of course, you have a youth program that's your feeder. But are the numbers staying pretty steady for you?
The numbers realistically have been staying steady, but they're like steady as in over the past 4 years. I'd say they're steady, but I think overall numbers are down, and sadly, it's not just wrestling; it's all sports that numbers are down. It's and you can go on and have a conversation with all the other coaches about kids trying to specialize in a sport and wanting to focus on one sport. And I could talk to you for an hour about my thoughts on the subject. But that being said, it's certainly. It seems more and more difficult to get kids just out for sports in general, not just wrestling. But, again, I'd say we have about almost 20 kids in the room, and I love every single one of the kids we got. They've been working hard the first week of practice. They've been asking the right questions. They've been doing what they're supposed to do, acting right, and working hard. And, I'm really happy with the core group we have. And, middle school, we got awesome numbers. I couldn't tell you the numbers exactly, but it seems like we got a really good group of numbers coming up. And, I'm excited for not just now, but the future of River Valley Wrestling. We got a lot to build off of, absolutely.
Well, that's great. I know that it was exciting for lots of people. As you mentioned, the team state 2 years ago and last year with the individuals at state, and that was a great source of pride, much like the football team getting to the state championship game. It sort of brought out a lot of people to say, we're really proud and showing appreciation for that success.
You think about that senior class last year. 3 years ago, there was a group of kids that got to go to the state baseball. 2 years ago, it was state wrestling. Last year, it was state football. For those that have participated in those three sports, they got to just experience something that very few kids get to experience. So that was a lucky group and realistically a very good group of kids. Now that being said, again, we've got some hammers in the classes that we have right now. So I'm excited to see what these kids can do going forward.
Great. Final question, Curtis. What about the SWC? What do you see out there in terms of how the competition stacks up for the coming season?
It's a pretty competitive conference, to be honest with you. I think you look at Belmont Platteville, who they've got a couple good individuals in Isaac Weigel, and he's certainly a tough wrestler. Team wise, we should be fine with them. Richland Center has certainly historically had their run-ins with River Valley. They certainly have a young group to build off of. The team that's going to probably be the toughest one going forward throughout the conference this year is going to be Prairie du Chien. They are stacked, and when regionals comes, I think realistically it'll be us versus them to see who goes to sectional final or team sectionals, and more than likely right out the gates at that team sectional semis, it'll more than likely be Lodi. So we'll see. But if I had to pick an early favorite for the conference right now, it's Prairie du Chien. But again, we got quite a bit of growing to do, and I think we are, after this first week, we're definitely pointed in the right direction.
Good news. Well, Curtis, thanks for taking the time today, and good luck with the season coming up.
Thank you for having me. Can't wait.